Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Torah study. Uh, this week we studied a portion of Yitro. Yitro was a Midianite, a non-Jew that lived. There was I shared once that was just discovered by someone who researched, and they believe that it was in the peninsula between Egypt and Saudi Arabia. It's a section in the desert that Saudi Arabia does not allow for any archaeological discovery or research. And perhaps this historian believes that even Mount Sinai might be there. However, the Midianites later on, towards the end of Moshe's life, will be totally wiped out by God's order, but that's not the discussion of our portion. I want to begin with the first four words of this week's portion. And you'll find it in the Chumash, if you have the same Chumash as we use in synagogue, on page 459, chapter 18, verse 1. The text reads, Yitro, the priest of Midian, father-in-law of Moshe, heard about the splitting of the sea and all that God has done to Moshe and to Israel, and he decided to join Moshe and the Jewish people as we read about his arrival and his advice to the Jewish people. My biggest problem with the first four words are the Torah described Yitro as the Kohen Midian, the priest of Midian. Midian, in ancient times, the nations were named after their idols. So when you say that he was the priest of Midian, he was the, so to say, the leader of the idol worshipping. He's the one who was training, executing, and making sure everybody worship idols. And in fact, he was the go-to when it comes to the Midian idol. The Torah should have spared that information because A, it is unnecessary, it doesn't add anything, similarly, and B, it is actually not complementary to Yitro and Moshe, is about his father-in-law. Why does the Torah choose to mention that Yitro was Kohen Midian, who was the priest, the chief of priests of Midian, if this is not something that definitely for a Jew, it's not to be proud of, and I'm not sure that Yitro would be proud of. So I have decided to talk about this because during the week I gave a class on JLI, which, by the way, I must say it's a fascinating class. And the next lesson, which I just prepared tonight, is even more exciting. And anyone who had feared that they heard it before with another course, I guarantee you did not. And it is very, very beautiful. And it's for so much solid information that helps us live a better life. But during the class at JLI this week, someone asked if speaking speaking bad. What's wrong? How liable a person is about speaking inappropriately. And my response was that in Judaism, speech is as effective as action. They both are treated equally, and in fact, speech sometimes it's treated even with greater restrictions and harshness if it's a negative speech. And by the way, the positive as well, it is very, very important. And I want to dedicate most, or if not all, of today's discussion about speech. And then we'll come back to Yitro. How come the Torah is mentioning a title that's not complementary for the students who study the Torah? So first, I want to share with you some rules. I have compiled a bunch of rules that I want to go over and make sure that you have, because it gives me the opportunity to talk about speech. There is a statement in the Jewish law, in Israeli law, זכות הציבור לדעת, the right for the public to know. In the Constitution, the first, I believe the First Amendment is the freedom, right? The freedom to bear arm and the freedom to practice and say whatever I want. That freedom allow and enable a person to say whatever they want with very few exceptions. But under all circumstances, most of the circumstances in the American law, a man can choose what he says or what he speaks without any boundaries. In Judaism, it goes the exact opposite. In Judaism, you are allowed to speak and say only if there is a good reason. If there is no good reason, just the default, it is inappropriate and unpermissible. So, for example, I am allowed, I am allowed to, I am forbidden from sharing any information in Judaism that may cause harm to somebody. That's number one. Number two, I am allowed to share information provided I'm certain it will not cause anybody harm. However, not about a person, not about personal details of a person. It doesn't matter if the person is a public figure or an individual. If I share something, provided it's beneficial to someone, it is okay as long as I don't talk about someone else. I can talk about myself. I can talk about my experience or what I saw. But if I talk about something I heard or saw someone else does, it is unacceptable and they can take me to Jewish court for that. That's why we're not going to talk about vision. That's why the Jewish law forbids someone from looking, peeking into someone else's window. By Jewish law, if someone is looking into someone else's window, the other person can take him to court and prevent that person from doing so. And therefore, if someone wants to build a house, they are able to, the neighbor can say, I'm sorry, you're building the house in a way you can always peek through to my window, and I want you to build it differently or with a distance, and he can force them. But that's not that vision, seen, we're not talking about. By Jewish law, I'm allowed to share information just to know the rule, what to do and how to conduct myself, or to tell the truth. What is forbidden is anything that comes from someone else's domain. If I talk about someone else, as I mentioned before, under all circumstances, it is forbidden. Not just negative behavior, but even ordinary behavior is forbidden to share. If I saw the man walking into a bank, or I saw him signing a document, or I saw him eating in a restaurant, it is unacceptable in Judaism. There is no allowance for me to share that part of it, that information. I am only allowed to share the information if the person specifically allowed me, gave me permission. If someone, not only that, if someone is sharing something, I'm about to buy a car, for example, I'm buying this stock, I am going to move to another town, whatever piece of information, unless the person said specifically, you can share, it is forbidden for me it is treated as if the person specifically forbade me from sharing. That's Jewish law. How do we know? The Talmud tells us that every time God spoke to Moshe, Vaidaber Hashem el Moshe, and what's the next word? Lemor. Lemor means to speak. Vayomer is, he said. Lemor, to say, to tell. Why does the word lemor appears? Vaidaber Hashem el Moshe. Lemor, tell us the Talmud, because if God did not command them to share the information with Jewish people, he would have been forbidden from sharing. Even though it's all about how to serve God and it applies to the Jewish people. The only way for Moshe to share information that God gave him is when God said specifically, please share this with the Jewish people. If we have time, we will see something very beautiful in that context with regards to the Ten Commandments as they appear in this week's portion. And therefore, by the way, by Jewish law, a prophet who prophesies is forbidden from sharing the prophecy unless he is commanded to share. Otherwise, and we know in fact, there were prophets who were told prophecy and they weren't told they have to share and they didn't share. But someone else that was told shared because God commanded that person to share. So prophecy appears to prophets not necessarily will enable them or allow them to share. So speech about someone else, if it's the uncomplimentary, if it's something that hurts them, it is obvious. I'm talking about day-to-day life that will not cause any harm, at least not no harm that I know of. Unless the person says to me, you can tell, it is unacceptable to share. Let's talk about the negativity of negative speech because until now I just gave you the rules, the restrictions. There is a prophet called Yeshaya. That prophet was told by God to deliver a prophecy of salvation to save the Jewish people. He begins the book of Yeshaya begins with the following description. It is plain text. He says, I told God I am impure and I'm unable to speak with my lips. And in addition, my people, the Jewish people, are very impure in their behavior. In other words, he shared information with God which is not complimentary about the Jewish people. Immediately thereafter, the text reads, Vaya'af elai echad min asrafim, one of the angels flew over to me with pliers. The Torah says melkachaim. Melkachaim is pliers. In the pliers there was coal, burning hot coals, and he put it over my lips. And the commentators say this was a sin for using his lips to share something that's inappropriate. Now, Yeshayahu, this prophet, did not say anything wrong in the sense of facts. He didn't share something that was not true. However, when God said to him, I want you to go and save the Jewish people, instead of accepting, he turned to God and says, I cannot, it's hard for me to speak. And in addition, the people are impure, they're not deserving of salvation. And just for that, God had punished them for speaking not nice about his children. Other places we read about being punished for telling the truth, but about someone else, is Joseph. Joseph, the Torah tells us that when he was young, he was very close with his father, and he used to deliver the news about his brothers to his father. He did not lie. He only told his father, the sages tell us that he told his father because he wanted his father to rebuke them and to raise them properly. But the fact that he shared information he knew, which was not a lie, it wasn't right. They were misbehaving, and he shared it with his father. For that alone, they later judged him and they say that he deserved to die. And that's why they justified selling him as a slave to Egypt. Part of the suffering that he went through, I'm not here to justify that what they did was correct, but they went through a courthouse to adjudicate him and send him to Egypt instead of killing him. And actually, part of the pain and suffering that Joseph went was to atone for delivering the information he knew about his brothers. In addition, we find that the Torah will spare extra word, use extra word to stay away from speaking in a negative way. When it comes to the great flood, the Torah described kosher animals, and then the Torah described non-kosher animals. And non-kosher animals, there is a word for it in Hebrew called tameh. Instead, the Torah does not say the word tameh, which is impure, The Torah used the non-kosher animals, adding 8 extra letters, and our sage tells us those extra 8 letters are similarly for no reason except to share with us that if you have an opportunity, speak in a positive way. The Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, was going taking an extreme. The Rebbe wouldn't even use the word Far East. Someone came to a dal to receive a dal from the Rebbe on Sunday, and he told the Rebbe, "I'm from the Far East." And the Rebbe says to him, "We Jews are always very connected. Don't use this language Far East. Say from the East that's not near." The same, the Rebbe would use words for a hospital. He would change to naming for the hospital, not a house of sick, but a house for getting cured. The Rebbe always said never use the word darkness or evil or bad. He would say not good, not righteous. He was very careful about using the language because it's defiling the person himself. It helps a very interesting custom, helps understand a very interesting custom. In Jewish tradition, on Rosh Hashanah, we eat different types of food for a symbol, as a symbol for a good, sweet year. The first one that everybody might remember, might know, is apple dip in honey. The second one is pomegranate. And the third one is the head of a fish. But there are more vegetables based on their names that we eat on Rosh Hashanah. Aside from the above mentioned three, some would eat carrots. Carrots. That's why there is tzimes. There is a kugel. There is a uh, we provided this year, for example, a Rosh Hashanah meal catered by Michael Zanis. So he made some types of food made out of raisins and carrots combined together. It was a very sweet, tasty food. Also, some people would eat a selek. Selek, I don't know how to translate it to Hebrew. Selek in Hebrew, just a minute. Selek in English would be
Beetroot, Rabbi.
beets, right? Beets. Anybody heard of the word borscht? Drink a borscht? I grew up, my grandparents would love on Rosh Hashanah and on Passover, they would have borscht. When people show me borscht, I want to, unfortunately, almost puke because I hated it. Today you can find in Publix in the kosher section borscht. Borscht is beets juice. Why do they eat beets on Rosh Hashanah? Because beets in Hebrew is selek. Selek means to remove. Lesalek means to remove. We want to get rid of our enemies. Why do you eat carrot? Because in Aramaic, karti or carrot means to cut off, to eradicate our enemies. So these are some of the foods. And by the way, Yemenite and people from the Sephardic Jews would have a table full of different types of fruits and vegetables, and they would say prayers with every one of them that is about speaking that to be blessed for a good year. In the Chabad community, you would find that we only stick with the three: a head of a fish, honey and dip in apple dips in honey, and finally the pomegranate. Somebody asked me, why don't you do more? Why don't you eat carrots? Why don't you eat beets? Why don't you eat lettuce? There's all kinds. There's some say cucumbers. There's all kinds. So one of the answers is one that was brought is those foods we eat because of their name, not because of their taste. So you need to know the name before you understand why you eat it. When it comes to apple dip and honey, you taste the sweetness. When you eat pomegranate, it's the seeds. The seeds represent that every Jew is loaded with good deeds. The same is a head of a fish. You eat the head, so you know you want to be like the head to always strive to follow the quality, not the quantity. However, there is a Hasidic interpretation, and that is those foods that we eat on Rosh Hashanah are all about positive. We want to be like the head. We want to have good deeds, as many like the seeds in the pomegranates. We want to have a sweet year. It's all positive. Other fruits and vegetables that many people eat, it's all about negativity. To eradicate my enemy, to cut them off, to let them get lost. It's all about negativity. And therefore, Hasidim stay away from negative language. So even the names of those that refer to something in not positive, we as Hasidim stay away and say it's not for us. If it's so, how is it that when God is mentioning Jethro coming to visit the Jewish people, he reminds us that he was Kohen Midian. He was the high priest of Midian. It is very uncomplimentary. The following is the Rebbe's explanation. The Rebbe says why Jethro came to visit the Jewish people. Seemingly, it doesn't make sense. We know the date he came. He came on the 1st of Sivan, 6 days before the Torah was given. Meaning, this is a month and a half, 45 days after Jewish people left Egypt. One can ask, why did he decide to show up now? If it is because he heard about the miracles, first, the miracles of the split of the sea and the 10 plagues are all gone, and there's none left of it, so there's no reason to come. In addition, he could have come earlier. Moshe's wife and children were with him. He brought with them Tzipporah and the two sons. He could have done that 3 weeks earlier, a month earlier, and be with Moshe much, much earlier. Says Rashi and the commentator that if you pay attention to last week's portion, the end of the portion is about the war with the Amalekites. Amalekite is the only way to compare them is to the Nazis of today that we know. Plain hatred towards a Jew and anything the Jewish people represent. And the Amalekites went after the entire universe had so much respect and reverence for the Jewish people. Amalekite says, why are you respecting them? They're a bunch of slaves. Let me show you I can hurt them. Even though Amalekite got defeated and was wiped out, and there is very little that remained, the negative effect that they had on the rest of the nations was lasting, stayed even after the defeat. And the Gemara and Rashi brings as an example, imagine someone is putting out a bath that's full of hot boiling water, and everyone is scared to touch the water until a smart aleck decides that he's going to show everybody there's nothing to worry. And he jumped into the bath and he gets burned. However, even though he's burnt and he will never be able anymore to go back, all the people around say, it's not so bad if someone was able to try at least. So Amalekite, after he comes to fight the Jewish people, was defeated. But it cooled down all the honor and respect the Jewish people earned around the nations in the Middle East after they watched all the miracles that God is showing them. Jethro wanted to, so to say, mitigate that negative impact. He wanted to come back to the Jewish people and show them great respect and tell the entire universe that the Jewish people are very special people. He, as a non-Jew, a priest, the chief priest of Midian, wanted to correct the negativity created by the Amalekites. And that's why he came now. He didn't come earlier because there was no miracles to watch. The miracles are already gone. Only after Amalekites is trying to fight the Jewish people and cool down all the respect for the Jewish people, Jethro comes and says, I am going to fix it on the other side. As bad as the Amalekites, Jethro is on the positive side. And that's why the best way to express his good deed is to share that he was the high priest, the most revered man in the entire country of Midian, a man that everyone looked up to when they worship idols. He was the wisest. He was the one who, so to say, the commander in chief. He was the one who would tell them what to do and how to do. Yet he comes to Jewish people, and as we read in this week's portion, he says, now I know that God is the greatest of all gods. because he have tried and reached and searched every God around and found out that nothing is compared to our God, to the Jewish people. In other words, the purpose of mentioning that he was the priest of Midian is to help, to assist in the purpose that he came for. He came for assisting the Jewish people, bringing the Jewish people back on top of a pedestal. And only when the Torah mentioned that he was the most revered man in his country, now we can understand the Jewish people are very special and they are very well respected, even by the elite, even by the high priest of that country. And therefore, this was appropriate to mention. I think I covered this idea about speech as best as I can. I could prepare different sources because over the years I have talked about speech and negative speech in many, many ways. And by the way, the spies also were punished for delivering negative speech about the Holy Land. But the point is that we do not have the freedom, because when someone asked me on Wednesday, it gave me the shock. I realized that people are used to the freedom of speech, the ability to say whatever it's on my mind, with regardless if it hurts somebody, if it doesn't. I also watched a program about Harvey Weinstein, not the Harvey Weinstein of recent that I don't know much, but I know that there is a Harvey Weinstein who was kidnapped in New York. Anybody remember the Harvey Weinstein who was kidnapped in New York? For 13 days, he was in a hall, and his kidnappers were part. He had the best tuxedo for a store in Manhattan. Everybody knew him. He was a close friend of Dinkins. And this is in 1993, I think. And two of his employees decided to kidnap them, and they demanded a ransom of $3 million. And they dumped them into a bit deep hole. The New York Post discovered the story, and they were debating whether they should reveal the story or not. The problem was the police told the Post that if you share that story, it will put an end to this man's life. Right now, the kidnappers have no clue that the public is aware of it, and thus it allows for the police to do a very thorough work, and therefore there is a chance of saving him. And they made the choice not to reveal on condition that they're going to be first to into the story when it will break. And that's actually what happened. It's a very fascinating point where the right of the public to know in America society is, so to say, the highest, one of the among highest rights that we all enjoy. However, we need to know that it's not the case when it comes to somebody else, and it's not the case about hearing or seeing something, because unless there is a purpose, there is no use, and it is inappropriate. I want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom, and I hope to meet you again soon in person.